Enugu. CSOs demand mandatory salt targets. Front of pack labels to tax as rain wreaks havoc in Otukpo. Power President Disu advocates global partnerships for women's leadership at New York CSW 70 Summit. And that story is on page 26, still on the same page. Gombe police avert religious crises, rescue cleric on hurt. Group urges Arewa youth to shelve protest plan in Lagos. NDLEA arrests UK-bound 74-year-old grandpa with 11-kilogram cocaine in balloons. Recovers large consignment of opioids. Intercepts 339,800 bottles of codeine shipment in Apapa. Oyo government moves against illegal fuel sellers on Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. Navy destroys reactivated illegal refinery sites in Rivers. And lastly, on page 27, 4 die, 4 injured in Lekki-Epe Expressway crash. And on page 28, NAF approves 12-month salary payments for families of fallen personnel. Gani Adams urges federal government to annex cultural festival for tourism revenue. SPOB supports indigent students with new uniforms in Ibadan. And on sports, we have title race not over yet. Guardiola. Mascherano sees red in Miami draw. And lastly, we have Iran women's players decide to leave Australia. And that's all on the newspaper review this morning. We'll be right back for the interview segment after this commercial break. And of course, the weather report. Please stay with us.
Milky and Creamy is truly milky and contains calcium. So, no need to add milk for that rich, creamy cup, which helps to nourish your kids.
Breaking news. The home is under attack, but not for long, because Hypo is here. Dirty floors and surfaces.
Not on our watch.
Dirty and stains no be do shakara. We got the remedy, original palasa. Hypo, go hypo.
Germs always find a way back.
No green. Protect every day with Hypo.
Breaking news. The home is on attack, but not for long, because Hypo is here. Dirty floors and surfaces.
Not on our watch.
Dirty and stains no fit do us shakara. We got the remedy, original palasa. Hypo, go wipe.
Germs always find a way back.
No green. Protect every day with Hypo.
Very much for staying with us. This morning, we will be talking about the devastating Nigeria's epileptic power supply. Of course, we've seen in recent, for a few weeks now, or even months, you know, how there's been low to no power supply in Nigeria, especially some particular areas in Nigeria. And there's been a lot of protests going on in some parts of the nation. You know, people talking about how it has affected their daily activities, businesses and the likes. But before we go into that, Nigeria's power sector is currently facing severe chronic disruption, with generation standing between 3,000 megawatts and 4,500 megawatts for over 200 million people due to gas supply shortages and a massive 3.3 trillion debt to suppliers. This crisis causes frequent national grid collapses, high operational costs for businesses, and widespread blackouts, leading to widespread protests. To do justice to this particular conversation this morning, we have engineer Ayodele Omogbeminiyi, an energy expert. Good morning.
Good morning.
It's good to have you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Let's start with the major causes of this erratic power supply.
Yeah.
It's been a long time coming, and we are still talking about it in 2025.
Yeah.
What exactly is wrong with our energy sector?
The challenges we have facing our electricity in Nigeria is quite cumbersome. Coming from the challenges of not generating enough, like rightly opined, decay in infrastructure, lack of manpower to meet those needs, financial policy issues, and so many that we have that are facing us. But one of the particular challenges that is very evident is the infrastructure decay and distribution failures. Mm-hmm. You know, when you electricity, according to Faraday's law, make us to know that you cannot store or keep electricity. So when it is generated, it has to be made use of. Now, the challenge is that it's not that Nigeria does not have capacity to generate more than 5,000 megawatts. In fact, as of today, if we are to do an head count of all the generating plants we have and their capacity, we have quite solidly more than 12,000 megawatts. But the reason why they cannot generate more than is because the infrastructure we have cannot handle, because the rate at which we lost the electricity generated. Let me give a typical example. Let's say now, you want to transport water, and invariably you have a container that is leaking. So, you know, when you pour the water at the content, let's say you have a 10-liter container, and you are moving from here to, let's say, Ogumosho, there's tendency that that water would get exhausted, especially based on the volume of leakage it has. So the challenge we are having in electricity is that it is not that we don't have sufficient generating plants, but we don't have infrastructure.
When you say infrastructure, what do you mean by that?
Thank you. In Nigeria today, electricity has been distributed into 3 arms. We have the GENCO, we have the DISCO, and we have the TRANSCO. Now, the GENCO are those generating electricity. You have Egbe, power plant, Shiroro, so many like that. Kanji Dam, that's hydrothermal. And when they generate electricity, they send that electricity to the transmission company, which is TRANSCO. TRANSCO is the one to send it from that high voltage generation to the distribution companies, which is the DISCO. In this part of Nigeria, we have the Ibadan distribution electrical companies. So what they generate is not sufficient, is sufficient. But while it is being transmitted, when you hear the grid is down, it is transmission challenges. It means the infrastructure, transmission infrastructure we have in Nigeria cannot handle the amount or the volume of electricity generated. So it has to shut down perhaps when we have electricity passing through it for hours.
So if we have, an infrastructure decay, like you said, and has been causing the major challenge for the epileptic power supply, why has it been difficult for us to face or target that particular aspect?
Thank you. The privatization of electricity in Nigeria has brought more harm than good for the people. And I will tell you this. The electricity generation is a chain. When you generate, let's assume we generate 3,000 megawatts now. You send to the transmission company, then they send to the distribution company. The chain of repayment is through the distribution company. And that is one of the major problems, in fact, the highest, the distribution company. When because they get a rebate back to the GENCOs. So when the payment is made by the citizens, the user, the end user, let me use that language, the distribution company has capacity to say that out of the 2,000 you generated, we only made use of 1,000 megawatts. That's a huge lot of gas, a loss for both the TRANSCO and the DISCO, for the GENCO rather. So if you are generating 2,000 and the payment you are getting is less than what you are generating, there's going to be a lot of challenges. And that is what you see. You read about the debt, because the accumulated debt over the years in the transmission and generation does not tally with what the rebate the DISCOs are paying. And the DISCOs are saying, it is because we don't have adequate meter reading. They are giving a lot of excuses. So all these things compounding together is actually affecting and I'm expecting the federal government to improve both on the generation and the transmission.
Before we go to the federal government aspect now, I want us to talk about the megawatts the number of megawatts we are currently consuming, which is not enough, which is not sufficient.
It's not enough.
How many megawatts are we supposed to consume or have in Nigeria for a country with over 200 million people that is going to sustain us for about 20 hours thereabouts in a day? It's a research ongoing. But if we are to look at what we have, in Nigeria today, they have scaled us into Band A, Band B, and the other bands. The distribution companies, giving some people preference ahead. But if we are to be on a scale of, let's say, the Band A, what Nigeria needs is up to 20 to 25 megawatts electricity that we can say we have at least minimum of 20 hours daily. But that means
we would have been able to improve drastically on our transmission line and our distribution line. Look, let's take the one that is closest to the people. In most of the areas, if you are to take an average, even in this Oyo state, how many streets has a concrete pole? Because this is where these challenges come from. You don't forget, I told you, I said electricity cannot be stored or kept. So when you generate electricity, that will be used. So let's say in an area where they have transformer faults, they have their fuse destroyed, or they have one of their line cut off, the electricity allocated to them will just be wasting away because it is not used. So, but if there is good connection, right from the distribution end and the end user to the transmission, even the because this current government has been able to meet the threshold of 5,000 megawatts. Yeah, they have sometime last year. They met and they sustained it for like 3 to 4 months. Up onto this dry season, and this has always been a recurring trend in Nigeria.
Dry season, and this is also another conversation, we talk about, people say when it's rainy season, we have light a lot.
Yeah.
When it's dry season, what's the correlation between the seasons and electricity supply?
Thank you. What it means is that, we have dams. When you are using a thermal production or an hydrothermal power plant, it's the use of water turbine. So, when you have enough sufficient water, you generate electricity faster. When there is no rain, it is only the stored water that you use. And, over time, the water will be going down due to heat, you understand, excessive heat and the like. So, there's those that are still using those hydro plants will not be able to generate sufficient electricity for us. And the other one we have is gas generating plants that we use gas to power it. Gas is very costly. You understand? The gas that is either wet or dry gas to power electricity is very costly. So when you use such to generate electricity, and that is what you can use effectively at this time in Nigeria. And the third one is steam turbine. It's a combined cycle. When you use a gas turbine, the heat coming from the gas, you convert it to a steam turbine, and we have just one or two, if I can, I know we have one in Abeokuta that has a combined cycle like that. So one of the challenges that we are having is that when it is dry season, because we mostly depend on the hydro power plants, there's tendency that we will have drop in generation. And because most of our power plants are not combined cycle, like I explained now, we have the steam. The steam is to convert the heat generated from the gas turbine to generate another, to the steam turbine to generate another volume of. So if that is the cycle we can work on immediately, it will improve. But the major problem is we need to upgrade on our infrastructure. Sincerely.
And talking of upgrading on the infrastructure, how are we going to go? How is Nigeria supposed to go about it? Or the federal government, what should be done? How should the infrastructure be improved? What are those things they were doing that was not working that should be scrapped completely? And then what reforms should be introduced?
Thank you. Electricity was in the exclusive list before. Currently it's now in the concurrent list, meaning states can also generate. Like in Oyo State here, we have a mini power plant that is used to generate for the secretariat and the government house. It's a gas plant. So what are we saying? They have the capacity now to improve on transmission. So in Oyo State now, we can look at our grid network and say, okay, what do we need to improve on electricity? All you need to do is put in some transmission line receiving place, improve on your substations, and ensure you have sufficient transmission lines. Where we have issues, then because Nigeria, don't forget, we have a grid network that is across the whole nation. If you generate electricity in Oyo State, they can use it in Abuja because our grid network is connected. So Oyo State can say, okay, let us do an independent, because the autonomy for independence is now available, because electricity has been moved from exclusive list to concurrent list. So it depends on how productive, or let me say futuristic, the government at both the state and the federal government. The federal government cannot do it all. And what they need to do, like you have rightly asked, is on the infrastructure, is to cascade it, identify those problems where we have the challenges. Let's say in Oyo State now, in the southwest now, we know one of the places that do not have electricity well is Osun State. You understand? Oyo State, we still have some level of electricity, maybe Osun. We have more industries in Ogun State. So why not? And Ogun State has, I think, Olorunshogo power plant. They have one power plant there. In Lagos, they have Egbi. Oyo State, we don't have. The ones we have, they are currently working on it. You understand? So Ayede, is it Ayede, or if I can't remember the name vividly, but I know we have some plants that have been shut down. So all we need to do is put those infrastructure. But the information I have, I think they are currently working on it. If that can be working, let the states take ownership. Let's put infrastructure in place that will help us enjoy that plant. So by that, you see, the challenges will be coming down on it. Another thing I think the government needs to do is that in a civilized nation, don't forget Nigeria is still a developing nation. In most of the civilized nations,
you mentioned now, and that's what most Nigerians have been opting
we have
for.